Captain Lee Minho was checking the cargo manifest when the first distress signal came through their communication system. The signal was weak and broken, but the panic in the alien voice was clear. The creature was coming, and everyone needed to. Minho looked at the message display on his ship, the Stellar Wind, and frowned. He had been running cargo between the Outer Rim colonies for 5 years now and had never heard such fear in an alien voice. The sender was from the Altarian Empire, and those beings were known for being brave warriors who never backed down from a fight. Engineer Park Ji-hoon came running into the command center with his tablet showing more incoming messages. Every space station in 3 star systems was sending out evacuation warnings. A massive creature had appeared from the empty space between galaxies, and it was destroying everything in its path navigator. Kim Soha pulled up the star charts on the main screen and showed red warning zones spreading across, the map like a disease. The creature was moving faster than any ship they had ever seen. Something that big should not be able to travel so quickly between star systems, but the reports kept coming in from places hundreds of light years apart. Medic Yang Do-yun joined them in the command center, and his face was pale from reading the casualty reports. The creature had attacked Nexus Station first, swallowing the entire structure whole. 3,000 beings from 12 different species had been on that station, and now they were all gone. The station itself was just twisted metal, floating in space. The creature was unlike anything in the galactic databases. It was bigger than most moons covered in black armor that seemed to move and change shape like it was alive. Thousands of long arms came out of its body, each one strong enough to crush the biggest warships. The mouth was so large it could eat entire space carriers, and its roar could be heard through the vacuum of space. Itself, Minho watched the evacuation ships streaming past their position, heading for the safety of the core worlds. Every species was running. The proud bird, like Altarians, who controlled the most powerful energy weapons in the galaxy, had tried to fight the creature. Their plasma cannons barely left marks on its skin. The insect colonies from Kepler Prime had sent swarms of their bioships, but the creature ate them like small snacks. Even the ancient crystalline beings who had lived for thousands of years and claimed to understand the mysteries of the universe were fleeing in terror. These energy creatures had seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations, but they had never encountered anything like this beast. The radio chatter painted a terrifying picture. The creature seemed to be drawn to places where different species lived and worked together. Trade stations, diplomatic outposts, and mixed colonies were its favorite targets. It would appear without warning, consume everything it could, and then vanish into deep space before any military response could arrive. Communication specialist Joe Minsu was monitoring all the emergency channels, and the reports were getting worse. The creature had hit the mining station at Kepler 7 and the research facility on Titan Minor. In both cases, it had completely destroyed the installations and left no survivors. The pattern was always the same: sudden appearance, total destruction, and mysterious disappearance. What made the situation even more frightening was that the creature seemed intelligent. It did not attack randomly, but chose targets that would cause maximum panic among the galactic community. The diplomatic station where peace talks were being held between 3 warring species. The trade hub that connected the Outer Rim to the core worlds. The research facility where scientists from different species worked together on new technologies, Dr. Yoon Nari. The famous human scientist was sending encrypted messages to ships in the area. She was one of the few beings still trying to study the creature instead of just running away. Her research station on Titan Edge was directly in the creature path, but she refused to evacuate. She believed there was something important about the beast that everyone was missing. Minho read her latest message and felt a strange feeling in his stomach. The creature behavior reminded him of something from Earth history, but he could not quite place what it was. The way it moved, the Sounds it made, the targets it chose all seemed familiar somehow, like an old memory trying to surface. His crew thought he was crazy when he announced his decision. Instead of joining the exodus of ships fleeing toward the core worlds, Minho ordered the stellar wind to change course toward the last known position of the creature. Park Ji-hoon argued that it was suicide. Soha said their small cargo ship had no weapons that could hurt something so massive. Yang Do-hyun pointed out that they had no medical supplies that could help if they were attacked. But Minho had spent his childhood on Earth learning about the great creatures that lived in the oceans. His grandfather had been a marine biologist who studied whales, sharks, and other massive sea animals. He remembered the stories about how these creatures were once feared and hunted by humans who did not understand them. Many species that seemed like monsters turned out to be gentle giants when approached with knowledge and respect. The creature was not just destroying things randomly, Minho realized as he studied the attack patterns. There was something purposeful about its actions, something that suggested intelligence and maybe even desperation. The way it approached the stations, the sounds it made before attacking, the careful way it consumed only certain parts of the structures, as the stellar wind changed course and headed toward danger instead of safety. Minho felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. His small crew of ordinary humans was about to attempt something that the most advanced military forces in the galaxy had failed to do. They were going to try to understand the beast instead of fighting it. The other ships in the area thought they were insane. Several captains sent messages warning Minho that he was leading his crew to certain death. The evacuation coordinators tried to order them to change course and join the retreat, but Minho had made his decision based on something the other species did not have thousands of years of human experience with creatures that seemed dangerous until someone took the time to really understand them. Behind them, the stream of refugee ships continued heading for safety, carrying millions of beings from dozens of species who had never encountered anything they could not fight or understand. The creature had shaken the foundation of galactic civilization in just a few days, showing every advanced species that there were still mysteries in the universe that could humble even the mightiest civilizations, ahead of them in the darkness of space. The creature waited like a living nightmare from the void between stars, but Minho was beginning to suspect that the real nightmare might be the galaxy misunderstanding of what they were truly facing. Dr. Yoon Nari sat in her research station on Titan Edge, watching the evacuation ships pass by her window like bright stars in the darkness. She was the only being for light years who was not running from the creature. Everyone else saw a monster. But she saw a puzzle that needed solving. Her laboratory was filled with screens showing video feeds from the attack's sensor data from damaged stations and audio recordings of the creature's terrible roar. But while other scientists fled in panic, Nari worked through the night analyzing every piece of information she could find. The creature movement patterns were not random at all, Nari realized as she plotted its course on a three-dimensional star map. It was following the ancient migration, routes used by space whales millions of years ago. These massive creatures had once traveled between star systems in great herds, but they had been extinct for so long that most species had forgotten they ever existed. Dr. Choi Woo-sung, her marine biology specialist, was reviewing the video footage of the attacks and making notes about the creature behavior. The way it approached each target, the careful movements of its tentacles, the positioning of its massive body, all reminded him of behaviors he had observed in Earth-ocean creatures. The creature was not feeding randomly. Woo-sung explained to his colleagues, it chose specific parts of the space stations to consume and left others untouched. This was similar to how certain Earth whales would target specific types of krill while ignoring other food sources. The pattern suggested intelligence and purpose, not mindless hunger. Dr. Kang Sun-mi, the team animal behaviorist, was analyzing the audio recordings of the creature vocalizations. Using advanced computer programs, she broke down the terrible roars into their component frequencies and found something that made her hands shake with excitement. The sounds were not random noise, but complex harmonic patterns similar to whale. Song's animal behaviorist Dr. Bae Hyunsik was working on the mathematical relationships hidden in the creature calls. He had spent 20 years learning to decode alien communication systems, and he recognized the structured patterns in what others heard as mindless roaring. The creature was not screaming in rage, it was singing in a language more complex than anything he had ever encountered. Nari contacted her old friend, Captain Lee Minho, through encrypted channels sharing her team discoveries. The creature was not a destroyer, but something far more tragic. It was alone, possibly the last of its kind, wandering the galaxy in search of something it could no longer find. The attacks on space stations might be desperate attempts to communicate, with beings too different to understand. The research team worked around the clock building a profile of the creature that painted a completely different picture than the one being broadcast across the galaxy. This was not the first time humans had encountered a misunderstood giant. Earth history was full of creatures that seemed monstrous until humans learned to see them clearly. Great white sharks had once been considered mindless killing machines until marine biologists discovered they were intelligent creatures with complex social behaviors. Silverback gorillas were feared as violent beasts until researchers learned they were gentle family-oriented animals. The massive blue whales that ruled Earth oceans had been hunted nearly to extinction. Before humans realized they were among the most intelligent creatures on the planet, while the galactic military forces prepared their most powerful weapons, planning to destroy the creature before it could attack again, Nari team worked frantically to develop something entirely different, a way to communicate with it. They had perhaps hours before the combined fleets would converge on the creature location. The breakthrough came when Dr. Bae analyzed the mathematical relationships in the creature songs hidden within. What sounded like roars of rage were complex harmonic progressions, similar to whale songs, but infinitely more sophisticated. The creature was not screaming in fury. It was calling out in loneliness, singing for others of its kind that no longer existed. Dr. Wusung made another important discovery by comparing the creature scars to injuries he had seen on rescued whales. The beast bore marks from energy weapons fired by various alien fleets, but more importantly, it showed signs of deep psychological trauma. Repetitive movement patterns, anxiety responses, and aggressive reactions to perceived threats all matched behaviors seen in traumatized animals. The creature was exhibiting classic signs of what human veterinarians called isolation syndrome. Large, intelligent animals that lived alone for too long began to forget how to interact peacefully with others. They became defensive and aggressive, not out of malice, but from fear and confusion. The galaxy. Most feared monster was actually a lonely, traumatized giant, crying out for companionship. Dr. Kang Sunmi realized that the creature choice of targets supported this theory. It attacked places where multiple species gathered because these locations reminded it of the ancient herding grounds where its kind once lived. The mixed colonies and trade stations were not strategic targets, but painful reminders of the social connections it had lost. As evacuation ships continued streaming past the research station, Nari made a decision that would either save the galaxy or doom it. Instead of fleeing like everyone else, she began preparing a communication package that could be transmitted to Captain Minho's ship. The package contained everything. They had learned about the creature, its likely psychology, its communication patterns, and, most importantly, instructions for approaching it safely. The galactic military was mobilizing the largest battle fleet in recorded history, preparing to use weapons that could potentially destroy entire planets. But Nari knew that killing the creature would be both a tragedy and a mistake. This was not an enemy to be defeated, but a patient that needed help, a lost soul that needed friendship. Her final message to Captain Minho contained a desperate plea. The creature was not evil, just alone and afraid. If humanity could find a way to communicate with it to show it kindness instead of fear, they might prevent both a tragedy and a war. The galaxy. had forgotten how to approach something dangerous with understanding instead of weapons, but humans still remembered Dr. Bay completed his analysis of the creature language patterns and transmitted the harmonic frequencies that might allow basic communication. It was like trying to teach someone to speak whale song, but the mathematical relationships were clear. The creature was using a form of communication based on complex musical structures as the research team prepared to evacuate their station. Before the military bombardment began, they sent one last transmission to the approaching human cargo ship. Everything they had learned suggested that the creature was not a monster, but a refugee from an extinct civilization carrying the loneliness of millions of years in space. The galaxy was about to make a terrible mistake driven by fear and misunderstanding, but there was still time for a different approach. If one small human crew was brave enough to try something that had never been attempted before reaching out to the void with friendship instead of weapons. The stellar wind dropped out of hyperspace near the remains of Nexus Station, and the crew fell silent as they saw the creature for the first time. The beast floated motionless against the star field so massive that it blocked out entire sections of the night sky. Its dark surface seemed to absorb light, making it look like a living shadow with glowing spots that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. Navigator Kim Soha checked their sensors twice because she could not believe the readings. The creature was generating its own gravitational field, pulling debris from the destroyed station into a slow orbit around its body. Twisted pieces of metal and plastic floated around the beast like tiny moons, creating a graveyard of the space station it had. Consumed, Captain Minho studied the creature through their main viewer and felt a strange mix of fear and sadness. The beast was beautiful in a terrifying way. Its armor plating shifted and flowed like liquid metal, and bioluminescent patterns ran along its massive flanks in waves of blue and green light. Thousands of tentacles moved slowly around its body, each one thicker than their entire ship. Engineer Park Ji-hoon monitored their defense systems, knowing that their shields would provide no protection against something that could crush them with a casual movement. Their little cargo ship was like a minnow swimming up to a whale. But Minho had made his decision based on Dr. Nari research and his own instincts about the creature's true nature. The beast's massive eye, larger than their entire ship, turned toward them as they approached. The crew held their breath, waiting for the tentacles to reach out and destroy them, but instead the creature simply watched, studying these strange newcomers who dared approach when all others had fled. The eye was not filled with rage or hunger, but with something that looked almost like curiosity. Medic Yang Do-hyun had prepared medical supplies and sedatives, though he privately doubted anything they carried could affect something so enormous. What he had not expected was for his medical training to become crucial in understanding the creature. The scars covering its hide, the way it held certain tentacles, the protective positioning of its massive body all suggested an animal in chronic pain communication. Specialist Jo Min-soo worked frantically to modify their ship communication array based on Dr. Nari instructions. The creature songs contained layers of meaning that required precise, harmonic matching to understand. It was like trying to have a conversation with something that spoke through symphonies rather than words. The first breakthrough came when Min-soo successfully isolated and replayed one of the creature's simpler vocalizations. The effect was immediate. The beast's massive head tilted and its attention focused completely on their tiny ship. For the first time in all the recorded encounters, the creature stopped its constant movement and simply listened, waiting for what might come next. Minho felt the weight of history on his shoulders as he realized they had achieved something no other species had managed. The creature was responding to them not with aggression, but with what could only be described as hope. The ancient intelligence behind that massive eye was desperate for contact with beings who might understand. The creature began to vocalize in response to their transmissions, but the sounds were so powerful that they shook the stellar wind hull like thunder. These were not the terrifying roars that had driven other species to madness, but careful, controlled sounds that gradually decreased in volume as the beast learned to modulate its voice for their smaller ears. Dr. Nari's voice crackled through their long-range communicator, providing real-time analysis from her research station. The creature was building upon the simple harmonic patterns they had established, creating increasingly complex musical structures. It was like watching a master teacher, patiently instructing eager students excited by the possibility of finally being understood. Park Ji-hoon made an accidental discovery while working on their damaged communication equipment. A feedback loop in the system created a low rhythmic humming that traveled through their ship hull. The sound transmitted through space by their equipment caused the creature to respond with what could only be described as contentment, a deep rumbling vibration that reminded them of a cat purring, but scaled up to cosmic proportions. The crew began to understand that they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. First contact with a species that communicated through music and emotion rather than words. The creature was not trying to threaten them, but to establish a connection to bridge the vast gap between their different forms of life. Yang Do-yoon observed the creature movements and realized that many of its scars were not from recent battles with galactic forces, but ancient wounds that had healed poorly over centuries of solitude. The beast was not just emotionally damaged, but physically suffering from injuries that had never received proper care. As they maintained their position near the creature, Minho noticed that other ships in the area were keeping their distance. Several alien vessels had arrived to observe the unprecedented meeting, but none dared approach as closely as the humans. The other species still saw a monster where the humans were beginning to see a patient in need of help. The creature began moving its tentacles in slow, careful patterns, creating what looked like a form of sign language. The bioluminescent patches on its skin flashed in synchronized sequences, and Minsu realized they were witnessing another layer of the beast communication system. It was trying to show them images, memories of its past, through the light patterns the creature shared, glimpses of its history. Star systems it had known, others of its kind that had long since died the endless centuries of searching for companionship in an empty universe. The images were heartbreaking in their loneliness, showing a being that had outlived its entire species and wandered the galaxy hoping to find others who might understand. For the first time since the crisis began, the creature stopped its destructive wandering and simply floated in space, maintaining a respectful distance from the human ship while continuing their musical conversation. The galaxy, most feared monster, had become something entirely different. A lonely survivor reaching out across the void for friendship. The other alien ships, observing from a distance, transmitted reports back to their governments that would change everything. The humans had not only survived contact with the creature, but had established peaceful communication. The impossible had happened, and it was forcing every species in the galaxy to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the beast. Minho ordered his crew to maintain position and continue the communication attempts. They were no longer just trying to survive an encounter with a cosmic predator. They were participating in the most important first contact in galactic history. The creature that had terrorized 3 star systems was finally finding the understanding and companionship it had been seeking for millions of years. The moment that changed everything happened 3 hours into their communication attempts. Communication specialist Joe Minsu had been working with Dr. Bay mathematical sequences, trying to establish more complex dialogue with the creature. When he transmitted a harmonic pattern that included mathematical progressions based on the golden ratio, the creature response was overwhelming. The beast's entire body shimmered with waves of bioluminescent light that pulsed in perfect mathematical harmony. Every tentacle moved in synchronized patterns that created visual representations of the equations they had transmitted. The creature was not just understanding their mathematics, it was showing them that it comprehended concepts that most galactic civilizations considered advanced. Captain Minho felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the true intelligence they were dealing with. This was not just a large animal, but a being whose understanding of the universe far exceeded anything in the galactic databases. The creature had been alive for millions of years, accumulating knowledge that spanned geological ages. Dr. Yun Nari's voice came through their communicator with excitement that was barely contained. Her long-range sensors were detecting changes in the creature biosignatures that suggested it was entering a state of heightened mental activity. The beast was not just responding to their attempts at communication, but actively working to bridge the gap between their different forms of consciousness. Navigator Kim Soha made the next breakthrough by accident. While calculating their orbital position relative to the creature, she noticed that her navigation computer was picking up gravitational anomalies that followed mathematical patterns. The creature was using its massive gravitational field to create three-dimensional geometric shapes in space, using floating debris as markers. The shapes were not random, but represented complex mathematical concepts that would take galactic supercomputers hours to calculate. The creature was literally writing equations in space, using physics as its medium. This was a form of communication that no other species had ever imagined possible. Engineer Park Ji-hoon discovered that the creature bioelectric field was interfacing with their ship electrical systems in ways that should have been impossible. The beast was somehow learning about human technology by directly accessing their computer networks, but instead of causing damage, it was leaving behind improvements to their systems. Medic Yang Do-hyun made the most important discovery of all while analyzing the creature biosignatures. The scars and injuries covering its massive form were not just from weapon damage, but from self-inflicted wounds. The creature had been harming itself out of loneliness and psychological trauma behaviors that human doctors recognized from treating severely depressed patients. The creature was suffering from what could only be described as cosmic depression. A being of immense intelligence and emotional capacity had been alone for so long that it had begun exhibiting self-destructive behaviors. The attacks on space stations were not predatory actions, but desperate cries for attention from a mind that was slowly breaking apart from isolation. Animal behaviorist Dr. Kang Sun-mi transmitted instructions to Captain Minho based on her experience with traumatized animals. The key was to establish trust through consistency and patience. The creature needed to learn that the humans would not abandon it like everything else in its long life. The breakthrough in true understanding came when Minsu played recordings of whale songs from Earth through their communication array. The creature response was immediate and profound. Its own vocalizations shifted to match the harmonic structures of Earth whales, but with layers of complexity that turned the simple songs into cosmic symphonies. The beast was showing them that it recognized the connection between human whale songs and its own communication methods. It understood that humans had experience with large, intelligent creatures that used music to communicate across vast distances. The creature was not just talking to them, it was acknowledging their unique qualification as a species. To understand it, Dr. Choi Woo-sung realized that the creature-feeding behavior was actually a form of recycling. It was not destroying space stations out of hunger, but breaking them down and rebuilding the materials into new structures. The twisted metal they had seen floating around it was being slowly reformed into what looked like artistic sculptures. The creature was an artist, as well as a being of immense intelligence. It had been creating beauty from the ruins of the stations it had consumed, transforming destruction into art as a way of coping with its loneliness. The galaxy had been interpreting artistic expression as mindless destruction, because they had never encountered a creative intelligence operating on such a massive scale as the hours passed. The crew of the Stellar Wind began to understand that they were witnessing the awakening of a mind that had been dormant for centuries. The creature had shut down much of its emotional and creative capacity as a defense against the pain of isolation, but human contact was slowly bringing it back to full consciousness. The creature began sharing memories through its bioluminescent displays, showing them images of others of its kind in the distant past. These ancient beings had built structures in space that defied current understanding of physics and had possessed knowledge of the universe that made current galactic science look. Primitive Minho realized that they were not just communicating with a lonely animal, but with the last living representative of a civilization that had once spanned galaxies. The creature was a living library containing millions of years of accumulated knowledge and wisdom that would be lost forever if it died alone. The beast showed them star maps of regions beyond the known galaxy, places where others of its kind might still exist. The creature had been searching for survivors of its species, but had been driven back by the pain of always finding empty space where thriving civilizations had once existed. Communication became easier as the creature learned to modulate its responses for human comprehension. It began using smaller, more controlled movements and softer vocalizations that would not overwhelm their sensors. The beast was adapting its communication style to accommodate their limitations, showing a level of empathy and consideration that amazed the crew. Yang Do-hyun observed that the creature's self-inflicted wounds had stopped forming, and some of the older scars were actually beginning to heal. The simple act of having someone to communicate with was literally causing the creature to recover from centuries of psychological damage. The other alien ships, observing from a distance, transmitted increasingly urgent reports to their governments. The humans had not only made contact with the creature, but had established what appeared to be a genuine friendship. The implications were staggering for every species that had assumed the beast could only be dealt with through military force. As the communication session entered its 6th hour, Captain Minho made a decision that would echo through galactic history. He transmitted a simple message to the creature using the harmonic patterns they had established. The message was an invitation for the beast to follow their ship and join them as they continued their journey through space. The creature response was a song so beautiful and complex that it brought tears to the eyes of every human who heard it. The beast was accepting their invitation, and for the first time in millions of years, it would not be traveling alone through the cosmic void. 3 weeks after first contact, the galaxy watched in amazement as Captain Minho made the most audacious decision in the history of space exploration. He ordered the stellar wind to dock directly with the creature in a maneuver that defied every safety protocol ever written. The beast, which the humans had begun calling Cosmos, responded by creating a gentle cradle from its massive tentacles. The docking procedure was unlike anything ever attempted in galactic history. Instead of using mechanical systems, Cosmos grew specialized appendages from its own body that interfaced perfectly with the human ship, creating a biological docking bay that kept the stellar wind secure while allowing the crew to maintain their independence. Engineer Park Ji-hoon discovered that Cosmos had been observing and learning from their technology for weeks. The creature had developed organic equivalents of human systems that were far more advanced than anything in the galactic databases Cosmos could generate. Power manipulate gravity, and even create localized atmosphere bubbles around visiting ships. Dr. Yoon Nari arrived on a research vessel to document the unprecedented partnership between human and creature. Her scientific team was amazed to find that Cosmos had been actively participating in the research process, providing biological samples and allowing detailed scans of its internal structure. The creature wanted to be understood as much as the humans wanted to understand it. The bond between the crew and Cosmos deepened when navigator Kim Soha fell ill with a rare space sickness that should have been fatal. The creature somehow sensed her distress and began generating specialized biochemicals that cured her condition in hours. Human medical science would have taken months to develop a treatment, but Cosmos created it instinctively. Medic Yang Do-hyun realized that the creature had vast knowledge of biological systems that extended far beyond its own species Cosmos had encountered. Thousands of different life forms during its millions of years of wandering and had learned to understand and heal many different types of biology. The creature was not just intelligent, it was also a natural healer. Communication specialist Jo Min-soo established regular conversation sessions with Cosmos, discovering that the creature possessed memories that stretched back to the formation of the galaxy. The beast had witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations and remembered details about species that had been extinct for millions of years. The most remarkable development was when Cosmos began learning human behaviors and responding to simple commands. Dr. Kang Sunmi worked with the creature using techniques she had developed. For training large animals on Earth, Cosmos eagerly participated in the exercises, showing an intelligence and willingness to learn that surpassed many sentient species. The creature learned to recognize different types of ships and to approach them. Slowly and peacefully when requested, it began helping with space traffic control, using its massive size and gravitational field to assist disabled vessels and guide ships through dangerous asteroid fields. Cosmos had transformed from a terror of space into its most helpful resident animal behaviorist. Dr. Bae Hyun-sik documented the creature growing emotional stability. As Cosmos spent more time with humans, its aggressive responses to other species began to disappear. The beast learned to control its size and movements when other aliens were present, showing consideration for beings that had once fled from it in terror. The breakthrough in interspecies relations came when a Altarian battlecruiser suffered engine failure near their location. The proud warrior species had been among the first to attack Cosmos, and the creature remembered their aggression. But when the humans asked for help, Cosmos gently carried the disabled ship to safety, showing forgiveness that amazed. The Galaxy trade ships began requesting Cosmos assistance with heavy cargo and difficult navigation problems. The creature could move objects that would require entire fleets to transport and could sense gravitational anomalies that posed dangers. To smaller ships, Cosmos became an active participant in galactic commerce rather than a threat to it. Dr. Choi Woo-sung studied the artistic structures that Cosmos created from recycled materials and realized they were not random sculptures but functional devices. The creature had been building communication arrays and gravitational manipulators that operated on principles unknown to galactic science. Cosmos was not just an artist, but an engineer whose capabilities exceeded current understanding. Creature began teaching the humans about regions of space beyond the known galaxy, sharing star maps that showed civilizations and phenomena that existed in the vast unexplored regions. Cosmos offered to guide human exploration ships to these distant places, serving as both protector and guide for future expeditions. Park Ji-hoon worked with Cosmos to develop hybrid technologies that combined human engineering with the creature biological capabilities. The resulting systems were far more advanced than anything either species could create alone. The partnership was producing innovations that would benefit the entire galaxy. The healing process was mutual, as the humans also benefited from their relationship with Cosmos. The creature shared knowledge about nutrition, medicine, and biology that improved human health and extended lifespans. The partnership was creating advances in human science that would have taken centuries to develop independently. Yang Do-hyun observed that Cosmos had stopped exhibiting any signs of depression or self-destructive behavior. The creature was thriving in its new role as protector and teacher of the galaxy. Its massive intelligence was finally being challenged and appreciated in ways that gave its existence meaning and purpose. The transformation was complete when emergency rescue services began officially requesting Cosmos assistance for major disasters. The creature could reach accident sites faster than any ship and could provide rescue. Capabilities that no technology could match. Cosmos had become the galaxy's most valuable emergency responder. Captain Minho filed reports with the Galactic Council, documenting the complete transformation of the creature from a perceived threat to an invaluable member of galactic society. The beast that had once terrorized 3 star systems was now actively protecting and helping every species it encountered. The story of the partnership spread throughout known space, carried by traders and diplomats who witnessed the impossible friendship between tiny humans and the cosmic giant. Every species began to reconsider their assumptions about creatures they did not understand, and conflicts that might be resolved through communication, rather than violence. Cosmos began expressing preferences for certain types of music and art that the humans shared with it. The creature developed what could only be called personality traits, showing humor, curiosity, and affection in its interactions with the crew of the Stellar Wind. The galaxy's most feared monster had revealed itself to be a gentle giant with emotional needs, just like any other intelligent being. 6 months after first contact, the galaxy witnessed something that would have been impossible to imagine. The most feared creature in known space was performing what could only be described as tricks for an audience of delighted children. Captain Minho stood on the observation platform of New Geneva Station, watching Cosmos create beautiful light shows for a group of young beings from 12 different species. The creature had learned to modulate its bioluminescent displays to create gentle patterns that would not frighten children, instead of the overwhelming cosmic symphonies it had once produced. Cosmos now created simple melodies that made the youngsters laugh and clap their hands. The galaxy's most terrifying monster had become. Its most beloved entertainer, Dr. Yunari, presented her final research report to the Galactic Science Council, explaining how humans had achieved what every military force had failed to accomplish. The answer lay in humanity, unique evolutionary history. While other species had developed in isolation on single worlds, humans had evolved alongside countless other species, learning to read behavioral cues and build relationships across biological barriers. The report documented how human experience, with animal training, veterinary medicine, and interspecies communication, had provided the tools needed to understand Cosmos. Other species had approached the creature with fear and weapons, while humans had approached with curiosity and patience. The difference in outcomes spoke to the power of empathy over aggression. Animal behaviorist Dr. Kang Sunmi had established formal protocols that allowed other species to interact safely with Cosmos. The creature had learned to recognize the different physiological and psychological needs of various aliens, adapting its behavior to avoid causing fear or discomfort. The beast that had once sent entire fleets fleeing now greeted diplomatic missions with gentle, harmonic welcomes. The Galactic Council had initially been skeptical of human claims about the creature's peaceful nature, but they could no longer deny the evidence Cosmos had not only stopped attacking installations, but had actively participated in rescue operations throughout the galaxy. The creature had saved more lives in 6 months than some entire civilizations had saved in centuries. Communication specialist Joe Minsu had developed translation protocols that allowed Cosmos to interface with galactic communication networks. The creature could now receive requests for assistance, coordinate with emergency services, and even participate in scientific conferences, where its vast knowledge was eagerly sought by researchers from dozens of species. The transformation was most evident during the Kepler crisis, when a stellar collapse threatened to destroy an entire system with millions of inhabitants. While evacuation ships worked frantically to move populations to safety, Cosmos single-handedly stabilized the dying star. Using gravitational manipulation techniques that no galactic civilization possessed, engineer Park Ji-hoon had worked with Cosmos to develop new technologies that revolutionized space travel and construction. The creature biomechanical systems could create materials and perform engineering feats that seemed like magic to other species. Entire space stations were now being built with Cosmos assistance in fractions of the time previously required. Medic Yang Do-hyun documented the creature remarkable healing abilities and worked to understand the biological principles that allowed Cosmos to cure diseases that had plagued galactic civilization for millennia. The creature medical knowledge derived from millions of years of encountering different life forms was advancing healthcare throughout known space. The most touching development was when Cosmos began actively seeking out other misunderstood creatures in the galaxy. The ancient being used its vast network of knowledge to locate species that had been feared or avoided by galactic civilization and helped establish peaceful contact with them. Cosmos had become a bridge builder, connecting isolated civilizations. Dr. Choi Woo-sung studied the artistic works that Cosmos created from recycled materials and realized they were more than sculptures. They were historical records documenting the rise and